This is TWiT.
Listeners of this program get an ad-free version if they're members of Club TWiT. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all of our shows, plus membership in the Club TWiT Discord, a great clubhouse for TWiT listeners. And finally, the TWiT Plus feed with shows like Stacy's Book Club, The Untitled Linux Show, The Giz Fizz, and more. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit. And thanks for your support.
I got a surprise email from Microsoft in the past week that was literally in the title said, this is about HoloLens 2 momentum. Now, momentum is a word for me that goes back in time. And Microsoft back in the day, when they were on a 3-year release cycle, would release a new version of Windows or Office or whatever it was big. And that was all they talked about. And then next year, they would talk about momentum. And the year after that, they would talk about the one that was coming next. I always hated that momentum year because momentum is nonsense. Right. And so I was with a coworker and we were going between meetings at some Microsoft trade show. I don't remember what. So we had all these back-to-back meetings. So we're getting tired. It's the end of the day. And I'm sitting there with our laptops and I leaned into him and I said, if this guy says momentum, I'm going to close my laptop and I'm going to beat him to death with it. And so we went into the meeting. The guy said, oh, Paul, I'm really glad to see you. I said, we're here today to talk about Windows Server momentum. And Keith, this guy and I both just looked at each other, just burst out laughing. This guy is like, what the hell's going on? And it was just like, I just couldn't take it. So anyway, here we are. It's 2022. This is literally probably 20 years later. And yeah, HoloLens 2 momentum. So Laurent, the guy who writes on news, wrote about it. But the thing that was interesting about it is they addressed an issue which has come up again and again, which is HoloLens 2 came out a long time ago. And HoloLens 2 was a significant update. Yeah. Was it that recently? It was 2019. Okay.
It was, admittedly, it was in the before times.
Right? That's right. Yeah, you're right. Because I was there. They announced it in Barcelona. So it was a significant update, but it was also, there was going to be another HoloLens 2, and this was going to be HoloLens. They kind of pushed it back to get a better HoloLens 2. And it looks like they're doing the same thing with HoloLens 3. And what they said about it was, we're still thinking about this, but we're not going to just release something. We're not going to do a half step. Like for there to be a new HoloLens, it has to be meaningful. I think they're doing a little bit of treading water here because I believe that most of the HoloLens team at one point just left. A lot of them went to Meta, right, to work on that stuff. Alex Kipman, of course, we know left this year. Yeah. What's your thoughts on does HoloLens have a future? I mean, what do you think is the story here for HoloLens?
I got a couple of things to think about. First is your cadence is based on hardware. Ultimately, you're pushing the limits of what hardware is possible to do. So the Moore's law matters, which means realistically, you could build a new device roughly every 2 years because you have a new set of hardware.
I know, but I mean, do you really want a bunch of different versions of this hardware out in the world, different capabilities, and now developers have to deal with that? I mean, what's the?
Oh, sure.
That's
and hopefully the code just moves forward, but that's part of the problem.
Right.
I think the bigger one, and they hint at this, but don't say it outright, is the U.S. Army derailed them.
Right.
That they got enamored of that U.S. Army future soldier contract. The Army made a huge raft of demands. They hijacked the HoloLens 3 development plan to fulfill that, and then it got canceled.
Yeah, I wonder if there wasn't such a huge emphasis. I'd have to look at the timing. I'm not sure about this, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if this coincided with what was happening with Jedi, where they thought, "Man, we're going to lose big here. We need this win. Like we need some to show somehow we're still involved with government. This is big." I know Army is military, but it's like a federal thing, and
sure.
I don't know.
More importantly, and I don't want Amazon to win this. Or anybody else.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And the military demands for a device like that have a lot less to do with new features and more to do with things like durability. Right? It's got to be able to survive a soldier. So
this is like medical equipment. It has to just work. This is not
and be bomb proof, right? The rule is, you're at the line that surgeons use is I left a private in a room with 2 steel balls and he lost one and broke the other. Right. So you've got to be able to make it robust enough to function in those conditions. And they do that. Like you look at how durable military equipment is. It's extraordinary. But I do think if you haven't worked in that space before, and I did some contracting and stuff with a few different, their focus is very different. The mission is very powerful. So I think a person like Alex Kipman was deeply affected by that. and pushed hard to pour all
the guy who, as I said, was standing in an aquarium is now making a special built item for the military, which is not exactly the same thing. I almost feel like the company that wants to make what they should have done is like gone to a subcontractor or something to just do this. Like this this becomes that company's business, right? Exactly.
Yeah, to solve that particular problem. And that being said, like what I'm looking for is who replaces Alex Kipman? Who's the new lead?
And there's been nothing right on that front.
Well,
how long ago did Alex Kipman leave it?
This summer.
Remember.
It was only this past summer.
Yeah.
It's only been a few months. In the end, Microsoft does not reward those that pick up the pieces. They reward the heroes that make new things. And that would be shocking for HoloLens, but certainly not unprecedented.
So what you just said, by the way, if you don't mind if I just pause on that for a second, super important because you're absolutely correct. And this is how, we talk about Windows 11 fit and finish and the archaeological dig of new features of UIs and all that stuff. No one is going to get rewarded for making Windows 11 UIs consistent across the board. Like keep or get rid of control panel, but if you keep it, make it look like a modern app, or dig into those UIs. No one gets rewarded for that. That work doesn't occur because what you said 100%. That's exactly right. Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. But across the board.
Except that HoloLens is such a leading edge device, is in an innovative space. Like you're going to anger some important customers that you worked very hard to cultivate to experiment with this technology. You have to continue the care and feeding on it. But I think
at some point, though, you need processor upgrade. Forget about features. Just from a general performance, whatever standpoint.
Make the new set of chips, which is stunningly expensive. Like that was part of the problem. They did have to do custom chips because it was leading edge. You have to make the new set of chips, and the moment there is a chip available and you start down that process, you then have that sense the next chip's just around the corner. Like if we just hold on, we can skip a generation. Which is clearly where they are right now.
Yep.
So I do like the term industrial metaverse because I really want a metaverse that has nothing to do with Zuckerberg.
He definitely isn't doing that.
Yeah.
Like
he might be doing the steampunk metaverse, but it's not.
They'll do that thing where they kind of they reach into the commercial space a little bit, but the primary focus here is going to be consumer. And doing the reverse is possible, but I don't think you're going to see like a HoloLens 3 with a bunch of video games or casual apps or whatever. It's purpose built. It's going to be like a vertical business solution.
Yeah, you first need a place to work, then you get a place to play, right? Like new platforms are not built on the play part; they're built on the work part.
Yeah, well, especially Microsoft. But yeah, for sure.
But it's one of the reasons you tend to see these platforms succeed is when an enterprise embraces them and makes a 10-year plus commitment to it.
Yeah.
Once that line gets crossed, it's going to keep going along one way or the other. And, HoloLens Microsoft talking about 300,000 HoloLenses. I mean, that's not as ditchable as some other stacks. That's a fair number of customers. The question is who owns them and how much are they spending and what else do they buy from you? Because the other part they don't talk about at all.
Yeah, I was going to say
the Azure IoT cost of HoloLens.
Exactly per month per user. So that's exactly right. A lot of people hear 300,000 and think, "What are you talking about? That's not $1 billion business." Like, hold on a second. No one picks up a HoloLens is done. There's the custom software development that goes on top of it, and those monthly fees per user that go on top of that.
Yeah.
And that's where they
say an 8-hour day use of HoloLens is $1,000 a month in Azure IoT.
See, and you thought Netflix was getting expensive, Yeah. Okay. Speaking of Meta, John, I'm sorry.
It's until I see a leader for the HoloLens team that's going to do the keynote, that's going to talk about that. It's nothing.
It's standing still.
But you don't think that the rumor that they had killed HoloLens 3 and that everybody was getting moved off the team?
Well, there were rumors about this for the previous two gens, right? So the HoloLens 2 that came out is what internally would have been like HoloLens 3 initially. They kind of killed the midterm one. I think there's all kinds of reasons to do things. We could blame the headwinds, like Raspberry Pi just came out today or this week and said, look, we're not going to have a product next year. Next year's going to be building back. We're not doing Raspberry Pi 5 until 2024. It's like, yikes. But Microsoft, you could make the same well, it's not the same argument, but you could see that Microsoft doing the same thing with HoloLens, because the existing product does work for what's out there in the world, and to do something new, it has to be significant, right? You can't.
Well, they have missed the window. Like, another way to read this announcement is we're waiting for the next chipset rev.
Right.
Really.
That's right.
Because we've already missed the window. If we were going to hit the previous chipset rev, it'd be in your hands right now, and it's not. So we got to wait for the next chipset.